Don't call them liberals. Don't call them left. Don't call them progressives. Don't call them anti-fascists. Don't call them anything. What they are is a bunch of idiots whose cause has been completely diluted and co-opted by the evil forces of George Soros and others whose names you will never know, their organizations you will never know, you will never understand the concept behind this. Trust me when I tell you this, but don't call them liberals. Don't call them the left. Don't call them that. What they are, they're idiots, kids, fools, dupes, chuffs, churls, boors, idiots, iconas, dimwits, dullards, rusticators, agrestic fools, ideologues who have been intoxicated by the power of social media. Social media, instant gratification. If there is one item, one event, one singular injection of a vector, a direction course changer, a shapeshifter, the wellspring of revolution, whatever you want to call it, it's been social media. Because what happens is it encourages and inspires and invigorates the mentally challenged. And I'm not referring to what used to be called the retarded. I'm talking about the intellectually challenged. Truly, the idiots, the fools, the autodidacts, the under and uneducated. These dime store bumper sticker, playbook, echo chamber lefties, when they're not lefties, motivated solely by the love and the excitement and the illusion of being involved and of hating Trump. The beginning and the end, the alpha and the omega of everything that they stand for is hating Trump. That's it. That's it. Never for Hillary, never for progressive ideals, never for mass traction economic policies, never for anything involving infrastructure or healthcare or name it. Everything that they espouse, everything. And now by virtue of looking at the riots that are occurring in Berkeley and others and these Antifa, anti-fascist organizations, give me a break. You've been duped. You have been absolutely co-opted by agents provocateurs. George Soros, Otpor, and others. OTPOR. Look it up. Let me just say something right off the bat. One of the biggest problems that we have, and one of the main motivators, and in fact, propellants, if you will, accelerants to this maelstrom, this riot, and not just the physical riot, but this intellectual riot that's going on, is absolute, grave, and not atmospheric, but stratospheric ignorance. Ignorance on so many levels. Ignorance in terms of history. Ignorance in terms of plan, plot, strategy, direction. Nescience. Ignorance. Not understanding that of which they speak. It is that simple. I'm going to give you a number of examples and how the left is going to be imploded. You are dooming yourselves. And the right, or those individuals who answer to the dog whistle of the right, are laughing in delight by virtue of your implosion and self-destruction. You are fools. You are fools. And you get together in these scrums, sometimes in the street, sometimes by virtue of attacking banks and burning things. I don't understand even what your message is. You're making Black Lives Matter sound coherent. And they were probably, I thought, the most incoherent of them all. That also was exacerbated and fueled and propelled and accelerated by social media and Instagram, instant gratification. And look at me. Look at me. Give me a microphone to hear the non sequitur, the gibberish, the absolutely confused, logolalic, incoherent ramblings of something I don't know what. It's this rage. It's this rage that is compressed. You know, if you have an explosion, if you have gunpowder, and you don't compress it into a vessel or a cylinder, it's a flash. Nothing happens. But when you compress it, when you contain it, then you have the explosion. That's what we're having now. We're having people whose rage, this disparate, confused, fractionalized rage over a variety of things, primarily that of hating Donald Trump. The beginning and the end, the only, hating Donald Trump. The other day, one of the most fantastic examples of how, if ever you had to say, oh, this was CIA, this was inside, this was an inside job. I know you love that term. You use it a lot, often for the wrong reasons. But if ever there was an inside job, it was the protest at the airport. You don't have that without the okay, without the imprimatur, without the go-ahead and the green light of CIA. And don't give me this nonsense about CIA. No, they're not supposed to be involved in domestic. Stop it. Stop it. Do you know there is a rule? There is a rule among soldiers, among police, among activists, among world leaders. There is a rule, an absolute rule. And you never, ever, ever breach that. Other than the obvious, breaching the palace or the White House. No, it's happened here. It's happened here. How many times have people breached and scaled the wall of the White House? That's to send the president a lesson or a message. That's to send, especially they did to Obama, saying, play ball with us. Dallas, it can happen. See how easy that was? We turn our back and you're toast. But there's some rules in addition to not storming the palace, not storming the presidential quarters and that sort of thing. You never storm, you never commandeer an airport. Never. After 9/11, you have the tightest security at airports. When you saw what was happening at airports around federal jurisdiction, when you saw what was happening around the country at airports, that should have told you right off the bat, oh, they green-lighted that. Why? Because the CIA, for the longest time, has been cultivating not only Al-Qaeda, but the Muslim Brotherhood, and working in cahoots with Wahhabists, Saudi Arabia. If you don't know how this works, if you don't know how Western intel and we have worked tirelessly, not with our approval, not with your knowledge, and here comes this Trump guy. You ought to kiss his ass and give him a half an hour to draw a crowd for what he is doing. He poses such an existential shockwave to, you can call it New World Order, powers that be, whatever you want to call it, deep state, ruling class, invisible empire, whatever you want to call it. He comes along and he's upsetting the apple cart by going after Muslim countries. Oh my God. Got to put an end to this guy. You don't understand this. You don't do that. You can't do that. You don't know how to play the game, Donnie. So when you saw them give the okay and they commandeered and took over airports, that would have been your signal. But you don't know that. Why? Because you don't know shit. Pardon my French. You don't. You don't know anything. You've never read. But not only read, not read the newspaper. Well, that's another thing. What you read and what you consider to be news, I can't help you. It's like not eating junk food, but eating poison. It's like those people who are eating, whose diets are killing you. Your intellectual diet, your information diet is killing you. You don't realize this because you're in love with social media. You've been lulled, Narcissus. You would love the pictures of your face of every move that you make, your selfies and your self-indulgent. Take a picture of me. Here's my dog. Here's my dog sleeping. Here's my cat. Here's my cat sleeping. Here's what I had for lunch. Here's what I had for lunch yesterday. Here's an empty plate showing the crumbs of what I had for lunch. Here's my feet. Here's my hands. Here's the back of my head. Look at me. Look at me. I'm driving. I'm doing car videos. I'm not doing car videos. I'm walking around. It's me. Me. I have no message. I'm not saying anything. I'm not spouting anything. I'm not giving you disquisitions and informations as I am. No. Mainstream. I keep saying mainstream. It's not mainstream. It kind of is. What it is, it's social media. It's self-aggrandizement. It's absolutely this solipsistic narcissism. And when we saw those of us in the know, those of us connected, when we saw you took airports, they got this is an inside job. Oh, now we know who's in charge of this. Oh, now we know that thing in any other country. You try that. In any take over an airport, JFK. Oh, you would have been absolutely no. I'm not talking about Edmund Pettus Bridge Bull Connor beating, but you would be forcibly removed. That told you everything. And instead of you idiots understanding what was going on, and instead of you Antifa, anti-fascist, if you understood kind of how this was going on and worked within the system, you'd recognize it. But you don't, because you don't know shite. Mierda. Caca, doo-doo. You got it. You don't know anything. You react in scrums, in packs, in murmurations, like a school of fish. This is Le Bon. This is Kierkegaard. This is Nietzsche. This is Bernays. This is classic crowd and herd mentality. You're swarming. Don't you see what's happening here? And George Soros is loving this. Destabilization, hates Trump to no end. Trump is the worst thing that ever happened to New World Order, to the unipolar reconfiguration of the world into one global jurisdiction. So you didn't get what happened at the airport, did you? You didn't get that. Berkeley over Milo and his wanting to speak. So what do to encourage free speech? You know the irony. You know the situation. You basically destroy this town, whatever. Why? Because of the warmth of the new Klieg light, the new social media posting, look at me, look at us, and something happens to people. Let me explain to you something. There is, and I have been in my latest configuration. As you get to know me, you'll find that in the old days, when I was in, really high school, you would ask me, what are you listening to? What are you listening to? That was kind of like my new thing. Not what are you reading, but what are you listening to? Because music was 70s was just great. In terms of jazz. What are you listening to? Oh, you're going into, Anthony Braxton. Ooh, wow, look at that. I remember when, whatever. It was music. What are you listening to? Then later on, what are you reading? Maybe what are you watching? What are you getting into? Lately, you would ask me, based upon the way I live my life, like a candle in the wind, you would ask me, what are you studying? What's the area? Crowd psychology, herd mentality, public relation, but this kind of a mass macro psychology, the psychology of the herd, of when something in you, when this cortical part, this executive part of the brain that deals with judgment, that deals with combinations of limbic system and orbital cortex, and that part here, that psychopaths, it's right behind your eye, the part that psychopaths don't have, that ability, that head and heart connection. When you have this feeling of judgment, I'm not going to do that. See, when you're by yourself, it's one thing. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to, whatever. I mean, you have this you. And then there's different ways to chip away at how you're going to behave. One of them is alcohol. You want to get brave? Have a drink. You want to do something tough? Have a drink. Maybe some drugs, depending upon what it is. Have a drink. You can affect it chemically. You can do that. You can also listen to music sometimes. That'll change you. But one of the best ways, and this is so primordial, so primeval, so atavistic, so evolutionary, that is the crowd and the herd and the murmuration, the school of fish, the starlings that fly in these patterns. And you wonder, how do they do that? They think collectively. They lose individuality and they become a unit. That's what the Marine Corps does. That's what basic training does. That's what a great combat unit does. You think as a unit. You think not individually. It's us. Us. We move together. We move like those starlings and fish. That's what I've been reading about. And that's what amazes me. And there are many, many ways for people, especially those people who don't have any affiliation. You got to understand something. Political connections, political ideology gives a lot of people an identity. It's like a cult. It's like you can pick the cult you want. And what it does is it allows you to have this, not you, but I'm a member of this. I'm a Marine, I'm a Latino, I'm a New Yorker, I'm a West Sider, I'm a, whatever it is. I'm a member of this group. And when we get together and things happen, and all of a sudden there's movement, and maybe somebody throws something, somebody lights something, you start breathing differently. You become a cell in this organism. And some people just lose their mind. I've seen this. All of a sudden, they're throwing stuff. They're breaking windows. They're doing it. They're a part of it. It's like hypnosis. It's mob mentality, herd mentality. It fascinates me. And there's been so much. I've been going back and reading how poignant Milgram was in the Stanford prison experiment and how people act in groups. And there are so many groups of people. And instead of you saying, wait a minute, what is going on here? Why are we destroying property? No. The same people who used to look at black people, predominantly, and there'd be a riot, a cop would shoot somebody, and they would destroy things. And you go, why are these people doing it? Why are these black people tearing stuff up? Okay, they had a grievance. And I'm not trying to justify it, but one of their own was killed by a police officer, maybe somebody they knew in their neighborhood. And they were pissed off, and justifiably pissed off, not justified in destroying property. When you look at the Berkeley rioters, what pissed them off? Nothing. Nothing. Soulless. Because the judgment part of their brain, this collective cortex, this thing that provides where your head and heart are connected, where you don't do things, when you say, oh, not now, or hey, that's not fair, or hey, that'll hurt him. Conscience, judgment, appreciation of consequence, all those things, they're lost because people get in this group. And this group can be either on the street or in the bubble of social media. You don't understand. You don't really understand what Twitter and social media and Instagram and blogging and posting gives the anonymous, the people who did not have any sense of belonging anywhere. You can be anywhere. You don't have to be in a street rioting. You can riot in words. You can troll. You can hate. You can focus and target your anger. And what's interesting is that I'm sitting back as an amateur social psychologist, whatever you want to call this, herd mentality expert, and I'm watching this and I am mesmerized by what I see, by what's happening here. There are things that happen that can affect not only your immediate sense, and by the way, this is all targeted at this phony left because they're dead. These guys are missing everything. They're being set up. Their image is changing. When COINTELPRO and J. Edgar Hoover changed and wanted to infiltrate the Black Panthers in particular, and wanted to change the image of them as being a group of people determined to use self-defense as a means of protecting their home and hearth and brothers and sisters and providing free breakfast programs and lunch and all that stuff. Oh no, they changed that. And they changed the image until they became now militant. You don't hear that word anymore, but I remember, I'm old enough to remember militant black, militant. You change it. And their cause was taken away from them. That's what's happening to the left. That's what's happening because you're in a scrum that's not even a scrum. A scrum is contained. It's organized. You're all over the place. And what is your biggest problem? You don't even know the facts. The other day, yet again, these tropes, these memes, these things that are rehashed, just headline mentality. And there it was again, global warming. When will you understand? When will you listen? Will you stop and realize that you are the biggest fool ever? You and others as well. You're falling for a con that has no basis. It's the biggest snake oil charade, for lack of a better word. You don't understand it. You repeat memes and tropes and ideas. You say them over and over again that every scientist worth his salt. No, that's not true. There is not a unanimous, no. Don't you understand? We've looked and seen that there's always a correlation between temperature and CO2. But you, like others, believe that, so the more CO2, the warmer it gets? No, it's the opposite. The warmer it gets, the more CO2 there is. And what's wrong with CO2? What is it? Greenhouse gases. You know what are in the greenhouse gases? Water vapor. Greenhouse gases are 0.05% of the atmosphere. And man-made is even more de minimis, but you don't care because this goes outside of the mentality and the mindset of the scrum, the group, your pack, your crew, your posse. You don't, information means nothing to you. You don't want to know anything. No. For you to stop and say, wait a minute, you mean I don't know what I'm talking about? You mean they don't know what they're talking about? You mean we don't know what we're talking about? Oh my God. You don't get this. Geoengineering people is probably the greatest, geoengineering, or chemtrails as you call it, is still one of the greatest mysteries to me. How people who swear they care about global warming, they worry about the Kyoto Protocol, they worry about polar bears, they worry about all of the stuff that just, and they don't look up and realize that what you are seeing are aerosolized nanoparticulates of aluminum, barium, and strontium sprayed with patents online, YouTube admissions, testimonies, Senate hearings, testimony, admissions, name it. Not interested. Because it's not in the scrum. It's not in this. You've got a group of people who have no soul, no mind, no history. You'll go along with anything. You'll repeat anti-Russian tropes that you have no idea. I'm still hearing this. We all have friends. Very smart individual. Still railing about Russia invading Ukraine. I'm thinking, oh my God. You see, this is the problem. But in the meantime, what's happening, whether you like it or not, you have a president who is kicking their ass. And I'm telling you, I didn't vote for him. I told you this. I voted for myself. The very fact that you have this breakneck speed, this shake 'em up, this telling people we're not going to play games anymore, understanding that it's not about migrants, it's not about people coming in to want to help to make the world better. It's about shoring up borders and and learning from 9/11. And I'm going to say this again, and I want you to tell your friends this. When I saw that they commandeered an airports all over the country, I realized, my God, look what happened. How about that? How good are they? Damn. That is something. That takes absolute. I mean, again, I'm. If you don't know what I'm saying, then you got to do some research. You've got to understand something. You don't do this. It's like breaking into a prison. I mean, airports after 9/11 are whatever. So you don't understand what's happening. Well, if you're on the left, if that's what you call yourself, you're being sold out. You're being betrayed. You're being set up. You're being made to look like fools. And you know who the beneficiary of that is? Trump. And by the way, don't feel too bad, because the Republican Party is in complete disarray. They don't know what the hell is going on. I mean, they have no idea. And your mainstream media news, your fake news, your CNNs, actually doing stories on Steve Bannon, nobody gives a damn about Steve Bannon or knows who Steve Bannon is. You can go to Times Square. You can go to Main Street anywhere and say, what do you think of Steve Bannon? They'll say, what the hell are you talking about? Race Bannon? Was that in Johnny Quest? What was that? In fact, he looked kind of like Mike Pence, for those of you old enough to remember Johnny Quest. But still, it's amazing to me. Absolutely amazing. There is such frenetic disarray, mental, emotional insanity brought to you by Trump. Brought to you by Trump. And the rest of the world is looking. Let me tell you something. I will never forget one time in Israel meeting with, I don't really know who he was, but he was a very good office holder of renown. It seemed like he knew what he was. He was a big shot. And we had to go through a lot of security portals to get to him. And he was with the equivalent of their State Department. And we were talking about Iraq or whatever, and I wasn't a big fan of then, and I am now, not now, of George Bush. About the Iraq war and war in general and stuff. And he said, let me tell you something. He said, I want to tell you what Arabs think. Not only Arabs, but the Middle East. And Jews included, and Arabs and Lebanese and Syrians and what have you. Egyptians, but just this area. I know it's Africa, but still. Anyway, this area. They look at George Bush and they say, now that's the America we know. See, there's this thing called toughness. You can say, well, we don't need that. Frankly, nobody cares what you think, but there's something about the world. Reagan had it. Nixon had it. Jimmy Carter didn't have it. Clinton maybe had it. And it's like the reason why you need a Giuliani when you're a mayor of a big city like New York. You need somebody who basically scares the hell out of people, who really commands an absolute sense of don't mess with me. And that is what Trump has done. And what you're doing in the meantime is you're being made fools of. Your left, your progressive liberal, whatever you call yourself, what are you who are setting things on fire, you're through. You have just ruined it. You've made fools of yourself. You've delegitimized whatever your particular position was. And now, every time anybody says anything to Trump, he's going to say, oh, you mean like the one tearing up Berkeley? Oh, you mean like that? You mean that group? Is that what you're talking about? See, you've done it. You don't even know you don't even know what you're doing. Because you're too into the thing. Why? Because you're into the social media moment. You're into capturing the event. You have no purpose. You have no goal. You have no message. You have no direction. No mass traction platform. No nothing. No nothing. You have no plan. You're here just to raise hell and to, I guess, convert and worry about such important issues like transgender bathrooms. And your idea of fun is to walk around dressed up as a foam rubber vagina or vulva in front of little kids and not worry about anything even vaguely resembling adult, legitimate, and important issues. Okay? Good. You know what to do now. Like the particular video and, of course, subscribe to the channel. Send this to a friend of yours who is one of these folks and drive them crazy. And in the meantime, comment as you see fit.